In this lesson, we'll be talking about the all-powerful Mograph in Cinema 4D. Now, the Mograph is a very, very powerful tool and basically makes Cinema 4D really, really strong in creating motion design. It's amazing the complex animation you can do with Mograph in a little amount of time. Now, I'm going to demonstrate this by trying to create a very, very nice animation using the Mograph tool. Okay, so let's dive right in. Now, to access the Mograph, you go to this menu here that says Mograph and you click this. I'm going to click on the cloner. Now, in the Mograph section, there are a lot of things going on right here. So we're going to take them one after the other. We're not going to touch on everything, but we're going to touch on the most important parts and the one you're going to be using on your every project. So I'm going to click on my cloner right now. So after clicking on my cloner, we can see there's really nothing going on in the scene. That's because the cloner is a generator. So that means something has to be plugged into it before we can see the effect. Now I'm going to quickly create a cube right now, and I'm going to turn this, I'm going to change the value to about 40, 40, 40. All right, so we have a perfect cube right there. And I'm going to drag my cube directly under my cloner. So basically I'm making my cube a child of the cloner. Now I've created a relationship between the cube and the cloner. Currently the cube is the child of the cloner, and we can really see what's going on right now. The cloner is cloning things, I mean, just like the name implies. So we have about 3 clones right here. I'm going to click on the cloner and go to the object tab. In the object tab, you can see the current mode we are is in the linear mode. The linear mode basically will clone your objects in the linear fashion. So if you decide to clone your objects in the Y, X, or Z, it's all based on the settings given into it, right? So currently we are cloning our objects in the Y direction, which is up right here. So if you look at this little thing here, it shows the Y is up. So that means if you add values here, it will keep cloning the object upwards, right? If I turn this back to 0 and then increase this value, now we see that it's cloning these shapes in the X direction. Now if I turn it the other way around, now it's cloning it in the X direction but in the negative X direction. The same thing also for the Z. To see what happens, it clones it in the Z, in the positive Z direction, and if I take the value this way to the negative direction, it clones to the negative Z direction. I'm going to take this back to 0. I'm going to take this way up to about say 50. I think 50 is fine. So let me just type in 50. And currently we have just 3 clones in the scene, and that's because our count is set to 3. Now the more I increase this count, the more clones that I get. Apart from using the cloner for animations, the cloner also helps in some modeling task. So say for instance you're trying to model a rail of a bridge, so you could just have that cylinder right there and then you can duplicate that cylinder to form a rail, right? So that's that. And we have different mode in the cloner. We have the linear, which is currently that's what we are on. We also have the object mode. There is the radial mode. We have the grid array, and then we have the honeycomb, right? So I'm going to be explaining this with examples, when to use and when not to use this different mode, right? So I'm going to create a very, very nice animation that I'm sure most of you must have seen online. So first thing, I'm going to drop this cube directly into this cloner. I'm going to go to my cloner. I'm going to set this to a grid array right here. And the next thing I want to do is to try and make sure these guys are directly close to each other. Now before that, I'm going to drop this down to about 20, 20, 20. I'm going to increase the value. Sorry, that was 29, 20, 20. I'm going to go back to the X and just increase the X a bit this way. Now the next thing I want to do is to go back to my cloner, and I'm going to just drop this to about 20. I'm going to leave this to 20 as well. Yes, so now we have them directly close to each other, right? Now the reason why I know 20 was going to work was because in the cube itself, the X and the Y and the X and the Z is set to 20. So basically that will correspond to this value right here, 20, 20, right? So The next thing I want to do is just create more counts on this axis. I'm going to create more counts here as well. Now for the y-axis here, we just need just one. We don't want to have more than one. One is just fine. So we have this really nice looking grid. I'm going to keep increasing this a whole lot more. I'm going to set it about 40. Yep, I'm going to set this other guy to about 40 as well. Now the next thing I want to do is to add an effector. Now effectors are like a clone's modifier, right? So when you create a clone, when you add effectors to it, it messes with the clone's attributes, or it basically adds some really nice amazing animations to it. So the effector is a way of controlling the way the cloner works. Now I'm going to drag in an effector to affect these clones. Now we have different kind of effector and they all do different things. If I click on the Mograph tab, I'm going to select the shader effector first. Now when I click on the shader effector, something happens, it just pops. Now let me go to my parameter for the shader effector. Now we see the scale is turned on, right? Now before I continue with this, I want to quickly go back on the cloner, and there's a tab that says effectors basically. So when I was creating this shader, the cloner was active, so I clicked on this. I was actively clicking on this cloner, and I clicked on the shader effector. So that's why Cinema 4D automatically drops that effector into the effector tab. So I'm going to quickly redo that again. So the cloner was selected, and I went to my Mograph and I clicked on my shader effector. So if I go back to my cloner under the effectors, we can see the shader effector directly here. Now I'm going to delete this again, and without selecting anything, I'm just going to click on the Mograph effector, shader effector. And now let me go back to this cloner, and I can see that there's really nothing going on here, right? So that's because this wasn't selected while we were creating this effector. But worry not, we can always drag this shader directly into this effector. Now it's affecting our cloner. So I'm going to go to my shader effector under the parameter. I'm going to turn up the scale because we don't want to have any value on the scale. Now basically what we want to do is we want to create this undulating motion. So we have the cues moving. The way we do that is to click on the position, and we're going to add some value to the y. So we're going to give it about 40, and currently it has moved this entire clone to the y direction. Like it has moved 40 centimeter to the y direction. But basically what we want to do is we want to load a noise map to the shader effector. So if I go to my shading right here, I'm going to click on this drop down arrow here, and I'm going to select my noise. Now you can see what's happening. So basically the noise is basically a white and black image, like you can see here. So anywhere that is completely white will be moved 40 centimeter in the y, and if it is completely black, it's going to be moved 40 centimeter still in the y, but in the negative y, right? It's going to so basically it's just going to remain where it is. Nothing's going to happen. So if I go back to my shading right here, we have this noise map right here. If I click on this, I'm able to access this noise map. So there's a lot going on. We have the color one, which is the black. We have the color two, which is the white. So basically anywhere that is white, we have the 40, we have the clones moving, we have the shapes moving 40 centimeter in the y, and where is black, really nothing happens, right? So currently we are set to a global scale of 100. Now if I increase this value to about say 300, see what happens, right? So it's a whole lot bigger, and then it changed the motion. So I'm going to give it an even bigger value. So let's try 600. Nice. See the way it's looking currently. So basically we are scaling up this noise map, and so we are having larger values, right? So which is making it look, so it's giving us a better animation. I'm going to scale it even more. I'm going to go to about 800 and see what it looks like. Awesome. So this is how what 800 is looking like. Currently if I play my animation, nothing happens. To see an animation right now, all you need to do is go to your animation speed and give this a value. Giving this a value of 1, and we see our animation going on right here. So this is how you create this amazing animation. So let's just quickly go over this once again. So first thing we did was I'm going to just pause this right now. I'm going to delete this shader, and so we're going to just quickly do this over again. So we have this cube, right, and we are putting this cube directly into the cloner. right? And the cloner is set to a grid array, and we have a count of about 40, 40, right? So it's 40 on the X, 40 on the Z, but we have just one on the Y, right? So we just want one. We don't want to have more than one because it doesn't make sense to have more than one. We just have one on the Y. And the next thing to do is to add our shader effector. So the way you access your effector is go to your Mograph effector and go to your shader effector. And the next thing is to go to the parameter in the shader effector. Right now, we don't want anything happening on the scale. We just take this off, and we want something to happen on the position, right? So we're going to click on this position, and currently we have 0, values, right? So if you put a value of about 40 or 50 right here, now the shader moves all the clones straight up in the Y axis 50 centimeters, right? But we want to use a noise map to control which of this cube goes up or which of this cube comes down, right? So basically, you know that this cube is supposed to go up, but we want to use another noise map to tell this cube, oh no, you are staying down and the rest are going up, or you rest are going up, or you are staying down, right? So the way we do that is go to our shading, and under the shader, this drop down arrow here, we click this, and we add a noise map here, right? So we just click on the noise map, and right now the noise map is telling this particular cube, the clones, to go up or when to come down, right? And currently, if you just go to our noise map right here, you open this, we can see the global scale, animation speed, loop period. Currently, what we are focusing on is the animation speed. If I click this to 1, it starts animating, right? So this is looking really nice. But if you give it a larger value, that means we're going to be scaling the noise map up, which gives us an even better animation, right? So I'm going to drop this to about 800, and this is looking really nice, right? So if I go back up here, so you can use this arrow to go back, right? And I come back to the parameter, I can even push this way up, right? And as I push this up, you can see what's really happening. And I can as well push this down in negative direction, right? Awesome. So that's how you use the shader effector, right? The next effector I'm going to be showing you. So I'm just going to I'm going to pause this. I'm going to, so I'm going to go to my layers. I'm going to double click on the layer. I'm going to select both of them, drop them on this layer, right? And then I'm going to hide them. Now the next thing, I'm going to create a cube. I'm going to go back to my attributes. I'm going to make this cube 50 by 50 by 50. And I'm going to go to my Mograph right here. I'm going to click on my cloner. And I'm going to drag this and make this a child of the cloner, right? So just like what we did earlier. And I'm going to go to my Mograph. I'm going to click on an effector. So right now, the next effector I want to tackle is the plane effector, right? So I'm going to click on my cloner under my object. I'm going to turn this back to 0, right? And I'm trying to make clones to go. I'm trying to make clones in the X direction, in the X axis, and I'm just going to increase this value, right? So going to rotate that. I'm going to move it around the scene, and okay, so I'm going to leave this to about, I think 150 is fine. Yeah. Oh, that was 15. 150. Awesome. So right now we have our plane effector. If I click on my cloner and go to my effector, there's really nothing affecting this right now. But I'm just going to drag in my plane effector right here. Now immediately I drag in my plane effector, we see that these clones go up, right? And I'm going to go into my clone effector so we can see what is really going on. If I click on my plane effector, we can see in the position we have this going in the 100 centimeter. Now this is looking really similar to what we saw in the shader effector, right? But they're different. I mean, in the sense that this doesn't have a place where we can load the noise map and any of those extra features, right? So I'm going to leave this to about 50. On the second time, I'm going to leave this to 100. Yep. So currently the plane is moving all these objects way up, right? Now a very important tab in the effectors generally is the fall off tab, right? So I'm going to click on the fall off right now, so it takes us to the fall off tab. Now if you're using Cinema 4D, previous version, from I think from about R20 or R19 downward, you don't have this options of field, right? Because the field right now, you're seeing something called linear field. Now field is a new addition, it's a new feature that was added in Cinema 4D I think from R20 or R21. So you might need to get a Cinema 4D R21 to do this, right? So when you click on the fall off, we have different kind of fall off. For this, I'm going to be using the box field. When I click on the box field, see what happens. Now a field was created in the plane effector. Currently, if I move this field, see what happens. So anywhere this field is interacting with these clones, they move up in the y-axis 100 centimeter, right? If you maybe make this 150, it's going to move up 150 centimeter. So if I move this way, see what happens. So any time the object come in contact with this plane, with this box field, they move up, right? So you can have that really nice animation going on right there, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my box field. Under the field, I'm going to increase the size. So I'm going to increase the size in the X a whole lot, so it covers the entire 3 boxes. So I'm going to go back here and then move it this way, right? So now we have animation going. So now I'm going to quickly go back to my cloner and I'm going to make this, I'm going to give this more count. I'm going to reduce the distance between them, right? So now if I move this plane effector, see what happens. They'll go up this way and they come back down, right? So we could quickly just come here, create a keyframe. So this is how you create a keyframe. You click on this button, it creates a keyframe, right? And basically keyframes are like black boxes that store data. They store transform data. So when you click on this, it creates a keyframe, and when I move forward, say in about 90, I move this way and I create another keyframe. I click in this. Now I've stored another transform data right here. So if I click on play, so we have this really nice animation, right? Looking really good. One thing we can also add is if I go back to the plane, under the parameter, currently we are on the position. I'm going to just click on the scale and I'm going to click on uniform scale, right? So they all scale uniformly. I'm going to click minus, I'm going to click 0.5, right? Okay, I think I want to make it minus 0.5. Yeah, minus 0.5. Awesome. So as this plane come in contact with this, these clones are scaled in the negative direction and negative value of 0.5. See what happens right there. Now we can also mess with the rotation. If we click on the rotation and I'm just going to give it a random value right now, and so if you click on play, see what happens. You have a really nice animation going on there, right? Now we've been able to create some really nice animation using the cloner and the plane effector. Now there is one additional effect I'm going to add. In Cinema 4D, you can add more than one effectors on a cloner, right? So you can have as many as you need. If I click on my cloner right now, I'm going to go to the Mograph tool. Under the effector, I'm going to click on my delay effector, right? So if I go back to my cloner and I click on the effector, now I have a plane and I have a delay effector. Basically, the delay effector has some really nice animation to our current animation we have in the scene. So basically what I want to do is to have some follow through animations. If I go to my delay under my effector, now we have something called strength, right? Now in the parameter, this is not what we're dealing with, right? So previously we've been messing with the parameters of the previous effectors we've been using, but for the delay we are working on the effector itself, the effector tab, and currently it's set to blend, right? If I turn this way up, you can see the effect happening. So let me click play, see what happens. So they blend really nicely, right? So if I turn this delay off, see what happens. So they just go up, right? But if I turn on the delay, there's this really nice blending happening. I can also turn on the spring, right? See what happens. The spring, awesome. So I'm going to increase this to about 300, and then drag it this way, so we have some more, you can see what's going on, so we have some more room to see the entire animation. Spring. So if I reduce the value, it spring less. If I increase the value, it spring more. So that is the delay effector right there. Now that's how powerful the Mograph can be. If you go back to the Mograph tab under the effector, we have lots and lots of effectors going on right here. You have the formula, inheritance, push apart, Python random, the reflector. We've talked on the shader. Now we have a very interesting one, which is a sound effector. So basically with the sound effector, you can load in a sound and you can drive animation with that sound. Another powerful effector is a step effector, and we also have the target effector. We also have the time and the volume. So there's a whole lot you can do with this. In the next lesson, I'm going to be touching more on this effectors and how we can use them in our animations.